Number 31 of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23, 2022. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of all witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you. Yes, do you have a point of order? Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Now, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motions adopted by the committee on Friday, July 15th, 2022, and on Wednesday, September 21st, 2022, the committee resumed its study of the export of Russian Gazprom turbines. It is now my pleasure to welcome a witness from Siemens Energy Canada Limited. We have with us Mr. Wohlschlegel, the Managing Director. So welcome, sir. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will go to questions from the members. Yes, Mr. Chong.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just on a very short point of order, I'd like to express my disappointment with the late cancellation of the Canadian Gas Association to this meeting. My understanding is that they gave notification to you, Mr. Chair, of canceling their appearance late Friday afternoon. And I'm very disappointed that they did so at such a late date after we had spent a lot of time organizing for this meeting. And so I wonder, I'm hoping, Mr. Chair, that you can convey that disappointment, at least for me and perhaps other members of this committee. I think it's a sign of disrespect for a parliamentary committee and for the 11 members on this committee that we're waiting to hear from them and waiting to hear their testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think all members do share in that disappointment. Is that correct? Absolutely. So we will make it known, Mr. Chong. Thank you. Now, Mr. Wohlschlegel, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, approximately a minute before your 5 minutes are up. I will provide you with a signal so we can ensure that that you don't go over time. But after your 5 minutes, then we will open it up to questions from the members. Please proceed. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for the opportunity to share the perspective of Siemens Energy Canada on this study. Our parent company, Siemens Energy, is a global leader in energy technology with locations in over 90 countries. Here in Canada, we service the entire energy value chain, from power generation and transmission to fully integrated systems for industry. The Canadian portfolio includes conventional and renewable energy technology such as gas and steam turbines, power generators, transformers, and wind power technology. We are also thinking forward to Canada's net zero commitments, working with our clients on decarbonizing parts of the economy. Our company has a 100-year legacy in Canada and is dedicated to keep the lights on across the country. We are also active in the emerging Canadian LNG sector. One of our service lines operated by Siemens Energy Canada is maintenance of specialized critical infrastructure for pipelines, known as aeroderivative gas turbines, or we call them AGTs. Turbine owners typically have long-term programs to maintain the safe operation of the unit. Companies operating pipelines around the world ship these turbines to the state-of-the-art Siemens Energy Canada AGT facility in Montreal. It's the only service shop in the world that works on these specialized parts. In February 2022, Siemens Energy was in the middle of performing maintenance activities on a turbine owned by Gazprom. When Russia began its illegal war in Ukraine, the government of Canada announced sanctions in response to these actions, including against Gazprom. Siemens Energy Canada immediately ceased all the work on the turbine froze the movement of the turbine, stored it at our facility, and informed the RCMP as required. Siemens Energy opposes Russia's unfounded military aggression in Ukraine. We support the position of the coalition of governments working on Russia's war, working to end Russia's war, including through sanctions. We abide by all sanctions imposed against Russia and have refused all new business in the Russian Federation. In May, the government of Germany notified Siemens Energy headquarters that Gazprom was insisting that the continued sanctioning of the return of the AGT would prevent the continued operation of the pipeline this fall. At that time, the government of Germany advised that non-functionality of the pipeline threatened a failure of energy security in Europe. It was this extraordinary humanitarian circumstance that led us to alert Global Affairs Canada, and this circumstance alone that led us to the filing of an application regarding potential return of the turbine. We recognize the seriousness of the situation. These were unprecedented global events. But in the end, we are engineers and not diplomats. We are not in the position to balance the situation, geopolitical situation between Canadian sanctions regime and energy security of Europe. Siemens Energy Canada is a good corporate citizen and recognized that we were not in the appropriate party to balance the extraordinary geopolitical issues at stake. We were, in fact, the service shop holding the impounded parts. Since the practical question was whether Siemens Energy Canada should ship out the AGT, we filed an application to the government pursuant to the sanction rules that the officials could take that decision. On July 9th, 2022, Global Affairs issued a permit pursuant to the Special Economic Measures Russia Permit Authorization Order made under the Special Economic Measures Act. Shortly after the permit was issued, we began the authorized process for the return of the AGT to Germany. The turbine was returned to Germany in July 2022 and remains there today. Our role throughout was to provide information to the Government of Canada. We were not involved in the Government of Canada's discussion with the Government of Germany or the assessment of Russian strategic intentions or any decision-making process. These were not our decisions to make. Strict adherence to our regulatory obligations is a cornerstone of our company. At all times, we operated in accordance with the sanctions regime. So thank you for this opportunity, and Siemens Energy Canada remains eager to work with the Canadian industry on energy projects from coast to coast to coast. I'm available for your questions. Thank you.
We will now open it to the members to questions. I understand that Mr. Chong, you are first.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Wolf-Schlegel, for coming to our meeting today. The turbine that had been under maintenance in Montreal was delivered to Germany in July of this past summer, but Gazprom has refused to take possession of it. Furthermore, last month, Nord Stream 1 has been shut down. And so my question is, considering these events, does your company take any position about whether the permit to export these turbines should be maintained?
Thank you for your question. And also feel free to address me by my first name. I understand my last name is a little complicated. To answer your question, I think that this was not our decision to make. We informed the government about this geopolitical situation at stake, and we couldn't balance, so we really filed only the permit to get guidance from Global Affairs.
So you filed the permit at the direction of the German government? Is that what you're telling us? Or you filed the permit?
We filed the permits at the direction of the German. So let me go back. When sanctions were put in place in March, we immediately stopped all the work on the turbine. It was only months later, about in May, when the German government instructed Siemens Energy headquarters, and the Canadian government that the energy crisis is unfolding. And that was public news. And at that time, we started filing for a permit to export the AGT to the customer.
Is it your view that that permit's still required, seeing that Nord Stream 1 is shut down and seeing that the Gazprom has refused to take possession of the turbine?
This is not from. Sorry, this is. Thank you for your question. This is not for me to decide.
What entity does Siemens Canada have a contractual relationship with for the turbine? What entity is it? What entity of Gazprom is it? Is it? Could you tell us that?
Thank you for your question. So, the contract with the customer is through our affiliate in the UK, Siemens Energy UK, and we are in this situation a sub-supplier to the Siemens Energy
and
UK.
who
entity.
is Siemens UK under contract with?
It's with a subsidiary of Gazprom.
Okay, thank you. Are there any penalties in either contract regarding, in this maintenance contract, are there penalties in the contract, either between Gazprom and the Siemens subsidiary in the UK or in the contract with the Canadian subsidiary? Are there any penalties in that maintenance contract?
Thank you for your question. So I can't comment on the penalties that are laid out in the LTP or maintenance contract, long-term program maintenance contract.
There's some people who've suggested while this was going on last summer that the turbines didn't really need to be maintained, that there was enough capacity and that there was enough life left in the existing turbines in the Nord Stream pipeline to continue operations. What is your company's view of those suggestions?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we built these turbines, these energy technology products, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the technicalities about the turbine. So it's basically rotating equipment that is similar to an aircraft engine. And these turbines have to undergo scheduled maintenance in order to continue operation. And there's we differentiate between scheduled and unscheduled maintenance. And scheduled maintenance can occur every, let's say, 25,000 hours of operation. That means about 3 to 4 years if you consider that a pipeline compressor would operate 8,000 hours a year, or let's say every hour of the day. So again, the maintenance can only occur at our Siemens AGT Montreal facility.
Were the turbines on the existing Nord Stream pipeline beyond those hours?
So they were scheduled to be around those hours every.
Just the last question I have for you is, what's your understanding of the relationship between Gazprom and the Kremlin? In other words, what's the relationship between Gazprom and the Russian government? Obviously, the relationship that Siemens has with the German government isn't the same kind of relationship that Gazprom has with the Russian government, with the Kremlin. What is your company's understanding of that relationship?
Well, I don't want to comment on the relationship that the government has with Gazprom, but for us, it's a sanctioned party. And hence, we had to stop all the work that we're doing with an asset that we had in our shop at the time. And then we started actually filing for the permit so we can get the proper guidance from Global Affairs Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. We next go to Ms. Ben-Dayan.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the witnesses. I would like to start by saying that I'm very proud of the experts that are in Montreal and we're proud of Siemens that's based there.
I believe that you're probably more comfortable, sir, in English, so I'll ask you a few questions in English today. I think I'll begin with a comment you made in your introduction, which I found very interesting, that your role was to provide information to the government, not political advice. And so I'd like to use the time with you here today to seek some more technical information. And I understand that you're an engineer as well. On September 26th, there were explosions of Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines. I understand that Nord Stream 1 was completely disabled by the explosion. Could you give us a sense of what the damage was to Nord Stream 1 versus Nord Stream 2?
Merci pour votre question.
Thank you for your question.
I prefer to do this in English, as you're correct. So I cannot comment on any damage that was done to any pipelines, whether Nord Stream 1 or Nord Stream 2.
Perhaps I might ask then, sir, if the turbine would be useful at this point for Nord Stream 1, given the current circumstances and the fact that damage was caused to that pipeline to the point where I understand it's unusable.
Thank you for your question. As long as the pipeline is not operable, the gas turbines would not provide any use.
Which turbine? I guess the turbines in question were meant for which pipeline? Would it Nord Stream 1 or Nord Stream 2?
Nord Stream 1.
And as a result, would they be useful elsewhere, or are turbines made specifically for a specific pipeline?
Thank you for your question. So the aeroderivative gas turbines, we use them for various purposes. Power generation is one of them. Industrial applications is another. And when I talk about industrial applications, a gas turbine is basically used as a mechanical driver for compressors. And those compressors can be utilized in compression stations in pipeline to forward natural gas, for instance. They could also be utilized in LNG facilities, where you actually have a process of refrigerating natural gas, and that also involves compressors. So we're distinguishing between mechanical drive applications and applications where the gas turbine is coupled to a generator. It is not easy to repurpose one asset from, let's say, from a pipeline operation to a power generation application, because of technicalities of software. There's modifications that are required to the asset to make that happen, and we're talking about really highly complex technical energy engineering assets. So this whole aircraft engine, as you know, is a high technology piece. It has sophisticated materials. It spins at high RPMs, up to 9,000 RPMs. It has precisions up to a thousandth of a millimeter. One engine alone, if attached to a generator, could produce electricity for about 100,000 homes. So just to give you an idea, it's highly complex, and it's not easy to take a unit from one application and put it into another one.
I understand, and thank you for getting into some of that complexity. I guess what I'm trying to understand then is if Nord Stream 1 was punctured to the extent that it has been reported, and I believe we've all seen the public reports regarding the extent of the damage to Nord Stream 1, can you let us know what the use is of this particular turbine at this point?
At this point, if a pipeline is not functional, then a compression station cannot operate. I cannot speculate about the future.
By now?
It's still in Germany.
But what is it doing in Germany?
The turbine is sitting there, basically.
So it is not being used, and it is not useful, if I understand correctly.
It's not being used.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ben-Dayan. We next go to Mr. Lemire.
Merci,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your welcome. You're hearing the interpretation. I just wanted to ensure that you're hearing me. In the study here, we want to know just to where Russia is testing Europe and its colleagues. As noted in the last meeting, we were expecting to have greater support to Ukraine. If Canada is not able to furnish natural gas for this winter, and this turbine won't allow Nord Stream to send enough gas, so what will need to be done to be able to support Europe this winter?
So thanks for your question. We are an energy technology company that is, and my role is, we are involved in the operations at AGT, and so we maintain the turbines. We cannot speculate of what alternative energy solutions need to be put in place to support Europe through the winter.
Est-ce que vous considérez que Gazprom
Do you consider that Gazprom is a reliable business partner?
I cannot comment on that question.
Avez-vous été payé pour faire la réparation?
You're paid to do the repair job even if the turbines aren't being used.
Could you repeat that question?
Est-ce que vous avez été payé?
Were you paid to do those repairs even if Gazprom isn't using the turbines? You were paid?
We only continued the work on the gas turbine after we received the permission from Global Affairs Canada. Like I said in my opening statement, we could not balance the geopolitical issues at stake.
Est-ce que votre contrat est un contrat préétabli?
Is your contract, was it already pre-established where you had to do repairs over a period of several years, or did you have a contract to do that specific work and you were paid for that work?
Merci pour votre question.
Thank you for the question.
We typically, for pipeline compression stations, as we require maintenance every 3 to 4 years, as I mentioned earlier, we typically engage into long-term maintenance contracts. For this project, a long-term maintenance contract was signed in 2012. This was by an entity called Dresser-Rand, which utilized Rolls-Royce engines. Just for background, Siemens purchased Rolls-Royce back in 2014, and there was another acquisition of Dresser-Rand in 2017. So those repair orders were part of a long-term maintenance contract that was signed in 2012.
Parfait.
The lobbyists register has noted that you met the government several times over the summer. We'd like to know just what context those meetings took place. Can you tell us what subjects you talked about with the government? Did you have talks about other things other than the repair of the turbines?
Merci. We had registered some meetings there was a meeting that took place in April, and that was an energy roundtable that was hosted by the German ambassador. There were guests from the German government present, and we talked about LNG, hydrogen, and critical minerals. As a energy technology company, we often get invited to these roundtables, so we participated, and we registered it because we had members of the Canadian government present.
Qu'est-ce qui explique?
How do you explain that Montreal is the only place in the world where the maintenance can be done on those turbines? There's no other country, not even Germany or Russia even?
Yeah, thank you for your question. This particular type of gas turbine, the A65, can only be repaired in Montreal, at AGT Montreal. There's another aeroderivative type of engine that's called the A35. It's a smaller one, it's not applicable, it's not useful for this application, but that's a type of turbine that could be repaired in other locations. Germany has also turbine manufacturing centers, but has different type of turbine technology. It really derived from so as I mentioned earlier, it was an acquisition of Rolls-Royce at the time, and it's very highly specialized. And we're talking about tooling test centers, right? So every turbine needs to be tested after a maintenance is completed. And it's the skill set of the people. And the people in Montreal are highly skilled, and they're working on this equipment. There's no other facility. We don't have any other facility in the world that could do this type of work.
Est-ce que le gouvernement du Canada...
Does the government of Canada, have they approached you with respect to the sanctions?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
C'est une question de traduction. It's a question of traduction. He didn't answer the question.
Fair enough. Yes, if you could keep it brief.
Did the government of Canada, did they approach you to speak about putting the sanctions back? That is, did they say to you that potentially there may be an approach to put the sanctions back into place?
Merci.
Thank you. We next go to Ms. McPherson. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much for being here today and answering our questions. I know it's sometimes not very easy to be a witness, especially a sole witness at committee. I guess my big question that I have right now is that, you know, in July when we found out about the waiving of the sanctions, I mean, we were all very concerned. We worried about what that meant to Canada's sanction regime, that, you know, how Russia would look at us waiving our sanction regime, weakening our sanctions regime. But since then, from my perspective, it's become very, very clear that Russia has no intention of using this turbine, and that in fact the weaponization of energy is part of Putin's plan for this illegal war. So what I'm curious about, what I can't quite understand, is why the sanctions, the waiver hasn't been canceled, why that hasn't been canceled. Do you have any idea? Have you had any conversations with government? Has there been any conversations about why that has not happened yet?
Thank you for your question. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier. So this is not our decision to make. So we're really looking at the governments to instruct us.
And at this point, is there any... Can you, as a representative for Siemens, can you see any point in there being the sanctions still in place? Are you still working on the remaining 5 turbines? Are you still doing those repairs? Are you still planning on sending them back?
Thanks for the question. So we're not working on any remaining turbines, and there's no intentions from the customer, I understand, that would take place.
The other question I have for you, too, is that I know you talked a little bit about meetings that you had with government officials earlier on. So I just want to make sure I'm very, very clear on that. Did Siemens Canada lobby Minister Joly or her office or her staff or any other cabinet member or their respective staff in order to push for the granting of this waiver?
Thanks for the question. No, we did not. We did not lobby.
Did you use a lobby firm at all for that?
We also did not use a lobby firm.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so right now we're in a situation where we have a product that's not being used, that was repaired to the detriment of our sanction regime. It's not being used. That Russia has now said that they will not take the remaining, or they will not take that turbine, or they've made it very, very clear that they will not. As a representative of Siemens, do you still believe that the waiver was the right decision from your perspective?
Thank you for the question. And I want to go back to what I said earlier. It is not our decision. We cannot speculate on the future. So we produce energy technology. We build products that provide electricity to people. And it is not our decision to comment. I mean, it's not up to us.
So I'm trying to maybe get around that difficulty. Would there be any detriment towards Siemens, towards the Siemens company, if those turbines, the remaining 5 turbines, were not in fact returned?
The work involved compared to our annual revenue that we make as Siemens Energy Canada Limited, we're talking about a fraction of a percent. So it's not about money here.
So for Siemens, it's a fraction of a percent of what you would lose if you were not able to meet those contractual obligations that you had with Gazprom. Is that correct?
That's correct. It is the energy security topic that led us to alert the government and to file for this application. So the politicians, the government could take that decision.
Has there been any decisions made with Siemens and your subs, the UK Siemens and all of the different groups, all the other arms, to stop working with Gazprom? Has there been any discussion to cease that relationship completely?
Thank you for the question. Currently, this contract, like I said, is the turbine is not going anywhere. It's still sitting in Germany, so the contract is technically on hold.
Is there any move to cancel the contract? I mean, on hold means that it's ready to be started up again at the whim of Putin, one would think.
So maybe I'll like to add also, and I think it goes back to what I mentioned in my opening statement as well. In August we announced to exit all businesses in the Russian Federation, and I think as of yesterday actually, you could see in the news as well that we have ended a joint venture, for instance, that we still had with our Russian company around turbine maintenance. So we continue to make progress there and exit our operations from Russia.
But you have not canceled the contract with Gazprom.
That's correct. The contract is still active.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. McPherson. Now we go to the second round of questions. And Mr. Hoback, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you, Chair, and I want to thank the witness. It's always awkward to be here by yourself and lots of questions. Now, I'm new to the committee, so I'm just trying to figure out the location of this turbine is in Germany right now. When it's functioning and operating, where would it be located, in Russia, or would it be?
Yes, thank you. That's correct. If the final location would be a compression station in Russia.
Okay, so then why would you ship it to Germany? Why wouldn't you just ship it straight to Russia?
We followed the instructions that were given under the permit application.
Okay, so then would that be the German government's request that you ship it to Germany, or would that be Canadian government asking that you only ship it to Germany?
Thanks for the question. We received the permit application from Global Affairs Canada, so it's our understanding that's the instruction from the Canadian government.
Was to go to Germany. So that would have been, I guess it's not fair to ask you, but one would assume that it would have been the German government instructing the Canadian government to ship it to Germany, not...
I can only speculate.
Fair enough. Give me a rough value of what these turbines are worth. What's the dollar value? Millions? Hundreds of millions?
Millions.
Tens? 20s?
Yes.
Do you use EDC financing for any of this stuff, or EDC insurance for any of your shipments overseas?
From Siemens Energy Canada, no.
For Energy Canada, no. How about out of the UK?
I cannot, I really have no full knowledge of all the energy. We have Siemens Energy entities in over 90 countries, so I'm not 100% certain if we use EDC financing in other jurisdictions.
Now, you have 5 turbines sitting there right now to be redone. Is that a rotating mechanism that you have that normally would be in place, that you'd just be rotating one in and one out all the time?
Yeah, so maybe to explain how this works, I mentioned earlier, every 3 to 4 years, turbines need to be overhauled. So at the compression station that connected to a pipeline, there are multiple turbines installed, and they get rotated out for maintenance. and once they reach their hours. So it's a maintenance. It's very common to have a rotation of turbines from the compression site to AGT Montreal for overhaul and back.
Okay. So I'm just kind of curious because, growing up on the farm, there's the regular maintenance period on a combine, for example, the X number of hours where you grease it and do everything else. But then there's always times in harvest you're going really hard and you push it for another 20%, 30%, 40%. What grace period would you have in that maintenance in regards to those turbines that are sitting there right now in Russia? How much more could they get out of them before they'd actually have to shut them down?
Thank you for the question, and that's a good comment. It's very difficult to predict. As turbines, though, don't get maintained, they will eventually fail. So it's important that scheduled maintenance are conducted. There's always a risk then to have unscheduled outages if maintenance is not performed.
And then if one was to
schedule.
fail in this situation, where would they get the parts? If you're not supplying it, what would they do?
Yeah, I cannot speculate where parts would come from in this situation.
Okay. How involved was the German government in regards to the lobbying here in Canada? I understand that you claim you weren't lobbying here, but I'm sure Siemens in Germany was being actively either lobbying themselves or talking directly with the government in Germany, looking about their energy needs. And I'm sure Germany was actively lobbying here. And how did that pull your organization into the lobbying efforts here?
Thanks for the question. We were notified by our headquarters that the German government had reached out to Siemens Energy Global, Siemens Energy headquarters, to inquire about the turbines.
Requirements and realized that there's a problem here. Would that have been information that the Russians would have given the Germans, saying, "Hey, you're going to have a huge problem getting gas in a meeting, and guess what? You're not giving us the turbine, so." We're speculating.
I cannot. I don't know the answer.
So again, you've got maintenance, and you've got grace period. Why the urgent status? Why we got to do this right now? Like now you're going to have 5 sitting there. You're not doing any work on them, so there's no urgent status on replacing anything going forward. Just kind of why did we feel at the time that this is so urgent to be put it back into the stream? One might say because obviously it didn't get there, and barring if there wasn't the leakages that we would have had here a few weeks ago, they've been running the old turbines until X number of hours. So why urgency? Why not just let them go with what they had?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And it's hard to speculate on the timing as well. We understood that the critical piece was the winter in Europe with not having enough gas supplies, and that drove timelines.
Where do you see?
I'm afraid you're over your 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We next go to Mr. Zuberi. Mr. Zuberi, you have 5 minutes.
I'd like to thank you for being here and fielding all of our questions. Merci beaucoup pour votre présence ici.
Thank you very much for being here.
Security of the pipelines, in particular Nord Stream 1 and 2. And from a technical perspective, I was wondering about the vulnerabilities that are there. Can you speak to that and how this sabotage, recent sabotage, impacts that assessment?
Thanks for the question, but I cannot comment. I have nothing to add there.
I understand your situation, and
we are a technology provider. We focus on the aeroderivative gas turbines, and we know how it's connected to the compression station, but we're not the pipeline operators.
I understand. And I appreciate your situation, your position, and I've heard throughout your testimony that you'd rather not speculate on certain matters, and that we appreciate. With respect to Gazprom's relationship with your company, has it evolved in the last 6 months, and if so, how?
So Siemens Energy Canada Limited has no direct relationship with Gazprom, as I mentioned earlier. So it's Siemens Energy UK basically owns the contract with Gazprom.
And with UK, is there any, to your knowledge, is there any evolution in that relationship?
it's hard for me to comment on that as well. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. So in terms of the sabotage that occurred on September 26th, when it comes to Nord Stream 1 and 2, how will that impact our allies in Europe, and which countries in particular are impacted, and to what degree?
This is a question also for I guess for the for Europe, or I would say the European government. But that was the information that was conveyed to us, is that the energy security would affect multiple countries in Europe.
And I'm assuming that you can't go into further details about that. I'd like to offer a colleague here who's present time to ask a question. Ms. Bradford, if you have anything you'd like to share, because I'm kind of going through my questions and understand that that you can't necessarily speak to them all.
Yes, no, no, thank you. I'm just subbing, so I wasn't really prepared for questions, but I do thank you for checking with me.
I'd like to allow you to please share any thoughts that you haven't shared thus far that you think might be useful for us at this committee.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I'll use that opportunity. So I want to go back to who we are. We are an energy technology company that works with the energy industry in Canada. So we're a proud Canadian company, and I look at the events, and sometimes it's more difficult to explain this, but our focus right now is really on transitioning the energy sector for our customers, so they can achieve their net zero targets. So this is an exciting time for us. So we work across the entire energy sector, from renewable to conventional power generation to industrial, with us industrial customers. And so we continue to support the energy industry here in Canada with their technology needs.
Thank you, and I'll share my time remaining with my colleague, Ms. Damov.
Thank you so much. I'm virtual. I'm new to this committee, but I'm certainly not new to Siemens. I'm very proud to have a number of Siemens employees who live in my riding, and you have your head office in Oakville, Ontario, and proud to represent you. My question was whether or not there are similar turbines manufactured by other companies that could be substituted for a Siemens turbine to be used in Nord Stream 1.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is not an easy, it's not easy to replace turbines, and I explained this. It really depends on the technicalities of the pipeline. There are certain technical parameters that need to be met, and for that you need to have a special fit. And so it's a very long design period to design a compression stations and design the size of the turbine. So replacing existing technology with something else is a large undertaking, which you could probably compare to a new build. And those are very expensive and very time-consuming or lengthy activities. I hope that answered the question.
It does, and so I think what you're saying is that it would, both from a time perspective
over the
and all.
5-minute period.
Sorry, thank you, Chair.
Apologies. So we next go to Mr. Lemire. You have 2.5 minutes, Mr. Lemire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is Canada aware that there are sanctions regime combined turbines where the maintenance was programmed beforehand?
Au moment où le Canada impose des sanctions économiques à la Russie, est-ce qu'il était conscient que vous aviez des contrats avec eux?
There's no translation at all.
Were they aware of, sorry, at the time when the sanctions regime went ahead, was Canada aware of the contracts that you had, the long-term contracts?
Pour votre question.
Thank you for your question.
We informed the RCMP immediately after the sanctions regime was put in place. So I would assume that that knowledge was shared with the government.
Est-ce que le gouvernement
Did the government, was the German government aware of this particularity?
Thank you for the question. It was only escalated to us in May, so about 2 months after the sanctions were put in place. So, as I mentioned in my opening statement, we immediately, once we learned about the sanctions, we immediately froze the asset, stored it, and then the work continued in May after we were receiving, it continued in July after we received the permit application from Global Affairs.
il semblerait que Gazprom
It would seem that Gazprom referred to accept the turbine that was repaired because they wanted extra documents that would prove that the turbine was not under sanctions. Is this something that you brought up with the government over the summer, or is this something where you already had an answer beforehand?
Merci. The turbines are still sitting in Germany because I think because the customer is refusing to accept them, and the statement they are saying is that import, or actually, we can't ship them out because we don't have any import documents from the customer. So that's the situation right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lemire. We now go to Ms. McPherson. You also have 2.5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for being here with us. One of the things that you've been talking about is that the reason that Siemens Canada acted so expeditiously and so quickly was because of the energy crisis, because of the energy security across Europe. And I guess maybe I had less faith in Vladimir Putin than others have had, but was there ever any reason for Siemens Canada to believe that in fact Putin would the pipeline would continue to go forward if the turbines were provided? Did you have any inside information on that?
Thanks for the question. Maybe one thing also to clarify, I need to speak of Siemens Energy Canada because we had we're a separate independent company, and Siemens Canada was not involved. So we had no inside information here.
So you made a decision based on energy security and the need for energy security with no understanding or expectation that returning the turbine would in fact provide any sort of solution to the energy security challenges.
Thanks for the question. It was our understanding that the turbine played an integral part to the pipeline operation of Gazprom's Nord Stream 1 pipeline.
So you would have given it back expecting that it would have been used in the pipeline and that would have solved the solution. So But you had there was no information you had that would give you pause to think that, well, probably Putin is going to weaponize energy.
That was not, this is the part where we had to engage the governments and receive the guidance on what to do next.
And far be it from me to advise an energy company, but I would just say that it seems that continuing a contract with Gazprom is a challenge, and you may want to consider some of that. Really quickly, could you tell me, are there any other aspects of the Canadian sanction regime that have had impacts on your organization?
Thanks for the question. For Siemens Energy Canada Limited currently, or for Siemens Energy in total, we follow a strict adherence to, of course, the law and the sanctions in place. And I cannot comment on every, I don't know what sanctions impact what projects around the globe, but we have a rigorous system that would detect if any sanctions are in place. And in fact, actually, it's connected to our systems, so we would be alerted. We pride ourselves to strict compliance to sanctions regime, and that's automated in our processes.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson. Now, Mr. Walsh-Legal, you indicated at the start that you would only be available till 4:30. However, as you recognize, because of the vote in the chamber, we didn't get started till around 20 minutes to 4. So would you be available for another 10 minutes so we could provide other members the opportunity to ask you questions as well?
Sure, I am.
Thank you very much. Very grateful for that. Now we go to Mr. Chong. You have 5 minutes.
Thanks, and I'll be splitting my time with Mr. Genius. I think that the Department of Foreign Affairs should cancel the remaining export permits for the remaining 5 gas turbines in Montreal. What would Siemens Canada position be if that were to happen?
Thanks for the question. If the permit is cancelled, we would not continue any future work.
Would you voice opposition or support, or would you remain silent on if that were to happen?
I can't speculate. What we understand currently there's no work continuing.
There's no work continuing, but you applied for the permit. I mean, that was your decision to apply for the permit. So presumably you have a position if the Government of Canada were to revoke the permit for the remaining 5 turbines. And if Siemens doesn't have a position, it seems to me, Mr. Chair, that it's a pretty easy political solution to the problem, which is for the Government of Canada to revoke the remaining 5 permits for the remaining 5, the permits, I should say, for the remaining 5 turbines. Because if Siemens doesn't have a position on the revocation of the permitting for these 5 remaining turbines, then the Government of Canada has an easy path forward to do exactly that. Is that so?
I'm not sure if that was a question there.
Well, what I'm saying is, so what you're telling me then is Siemens globally has no position on whether or not the Government of Canada were to revoke the permits for the remaining 5 turbines in Montreal.
Yeah, it's hard for us to speculate on how the future will look like.
Well, it's not speculative. I'm asking you a very simple question. Whether you have a position on the revocation of the remaining of the permits for the remaining 5 turbines.
So maybe I should say we don't have a position.
Okay, thank you. That's clear. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In court filings, the Government of Canada said that one of their reasons for granting this waiver was the impact on jobs in Canada. Did you make any representations to the government claiming that denying the request for an exemption would impact jobs at your facility?
Thanks for the question. As part of the permit process, we communicated information on our facilities in Canada and also the numbers of employees at the facility at AGT, but we never stated that any jobs would be at risk.
Okay, that's a very important point. You never stated that jobs would be at risk. Is it the case that jobs would be at risk if the government in Montreal, the jobs would be at risk if the government chose not to grant this permit?
Like I said earlier in my statement too, this was only one of many contracts that we perform at this facility, and so it's a small portion of the work that we do there.
So if the government were to have said that, granting this exemption would protect jobs, you would say that's incorrect. You would say those jobs are secure regardless. You would say that the jobs at these facilities are secure regardless of the government's decision on this issue.
It's always difficult to predict the future, but right now we have we didn't say that.
You didn't say that the jobs are not at risk. The jobs are not at risk as a result of this decision, one way or the other. Essentially, I'm asking you to repeat your point, but it seems like you've been clear. Yeah, you're nodding, so I just want to, for the record, you're not okay. So, I'm interested by the fact that you said that you didn't lobby the government with respect to this issue, because we have in the lobbyist registry record of you meeting with deputy ministers in April, not you personally, but Siemens, and meeting with the Prime Minister in April. Pardon me, in August, and you've met with the government at that senior level, and yet you have not in any way lobbied them with respect to a decision around this issue.
So we had. So I personally had 2 meetings. One was in April that I mentioned earlier. That was the roundtable that was facilitated by Ambassador Sparwasser, when she had invited German government officials and Canadian government officials, and we talked about LNG and critical infrastructure, mining, hydrogen. And the second meeting in August was when the Chancellor and his delegation visited Toronto, Montreal, and Newfoundland. And we as an energy technology company were invited and present. We are very interested in the green energy technology developments in Newfoundland. And so we had engagements. In fact, actually, he came to our booth and talked to us about hydrogen. So that's why we registered.
Point is, you were talking about completely different things.
At no point we talked about the turbine. I talked about the turbine with him.
Okay. I think that's very clear, and I think that's my time. I'll take
Thank
more
you.
if I
Yes,
can have it.
you're considerably over, Mr. Jonas. So we next go to Mr. Oliphant for the last question. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the witness for attending today, and for also thank you for your corporate social responsibility, and both in your compliance with the Canadian sanctions regime, as also with your ongoing work in energy security, both in Canada and around the world. So want to get that out there. I hate the fact that I am probably the oldest in the room, and that is something I am coming to grips with. But it means that I've been through sanctions many, many times, beginning, and I do remember sanctions in the 1960s, which were often blanketed sanctions. And what we learned in sanctions regime around the world is that sanctions should be targeted to hurt the people that need to be hurt, and not hurt the people who are not at fault in any conflict or anything. So targeted sanctions is what we have moved to from blanket sanctions, which we learned in countries like Zimbabwe hurt poor people, not that. And our sanctions against the Putin regime in Russia and against many Russians and Belarusians is meant to target the people who are have illegally invaded Ukraine, and not targeting Germans and others in Europe who would not have energy needs fulfilled. So with our regime, we're attempting to be pinpoint, laser-like when possible, doing that. The turbines going back to Germany or not going back, would the impact of a turbine going to Gazprom impact Germans, Europeans, or Russians?
And thanks for the question. I think I have to go back to what I said earlier. We saw an energy security issue as it was addressed by the governments, and that made us file for the permit so we could export the turbine to the customer. It is difficult for us to say who would be hurt by those sanctions. We just follow the sanctions regime that was put in place. We understood this. We were limited with the ability to deliver the turbine. So, and all the work stopped on our side until we had the permission to proceed.
I recognize that perhaps employees at Siemens would not be impacted immediately, but if this work continued forever, would there be an impact on employees at Siemens?
Thanks for the question. Clearly there are impacts to energy, the energy security in Europe, as we see right now. So we understand this is real. But again, we are a turbine manufacturing and service center. We supplied, we overhauled the turbine. We made it ready for shipment. We can't speculate or cannot comment on what impacts or what results it would create. We follow the guidance here from the governments on how to proceed.
Thank you very much. So at this point, Mr. Walsh-Legal, I'd like to thank you very much for your testimony and participating in this session, which is devoted to a study of the Gazprom turbines. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So, members, if everyone agrees, should we adjourn this meeting? Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Yes.
I would actually like to put forward a motion, if I could, before you adjourn the meeting.
Can
that was
it
very
wait till
fast.
next meeting, just because it was just the bang away? Can it wait or can it not?
Well, Mr. Chair, what I want to bring up is the motion that I circulated already, and it's just that I think we need at this committee, as the Foreign Affairs Committee, to look at what's happening in Haiti and expedite the motion that was brought forward from a member from the government party and also from Mr. Bergeron, I believe, from the Bloc Québécois. I know that we have this on our calendar. It is so pressing. It is so important that we look at this. So I was hopeful that we could move the situation in Haiti, that study, up slightly, if possible. Well, and we do have some potential spots within our calendar. So, there are other things that we can move back. This is quite urgent. So that's what I wanted to talk to.
Just a point of order.
Yes.
I understand what motion we're talking about?
Yes, could you be more specific about the wording of
yes, and I will
motion?
read the motion in very quickly. Just give me one moment here. Thank you. That given the urgent and deteriorating situation in Haiti and the actions of the Government of Canada in recent days, the committee hold its two meetings on Haiti earlier than planned, and that these meetings happen before Friday, November 4th, 2022.
But I was just asking for
Mr. Oliphant,
Haiti.
one second, but you're just tabling this right now.
I would like to have some...
No, because we haven't,
48 hours
no one's
notice.
received a 48-hour notice, so.
Then I will table it.
Thank you. Yes.
But if we agreed, we could.
On the schedule, Mr. Chair, I hope the Canadian Gas Association shows Parliament some respect and this committee some respect and does make an appearance as they were requested to.
So you're asking that we write them back and
I'm asking that they appear in front of our committee as they were requested to.
Well, as you know, we
And
can't
hopefully
compel,
next
but we
time,
will certainly endeavor to do so.
they show
You can
up,
compel them.
as opposed to canceling late on a Friday afternoon, which is immense disrespect to you, Mr. Chair, and to the rest of the members of this committee.
All the members
Thank
of this
you.
committee. Absolutely. So this point well taken, and yes, we were about to adjourn this committee. Mr. Janis?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think it'd be good for us to have some discussions offline about Ms. McPherson's proposal. Obviously, I think it's a worthy situation. And while I have the floor, I just want to give a verbal notice. This is going to take 10 seconds, but just so it's down. Verbal notice of a motion that the committee report to the House that it calls on the Government of Canada to immediately revoke the waiver to Russian sanctions granted for the export of Gazprom turbines. Just a verbal notice of a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that point, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.